I had just finished wiping down the dashboard after a long airport run when the side door of the Calloway house banged open, and Elena Calloway came down the steps two at a time. Not crying, not stumbling, just furious in a way that made the whole driveway feel colder. I had driven for her father, Richard Calloway, for almost 6 years. In that house, temper tantrums were usually handled quietly upstairs, never out where the staff could see them land. I had my hand on the door handle and my jacket half buttoned when she pulled open the back door of the sedan and got in without asking. "Drive," she said. I turned around. "Miss Calloway, I clock out in 5 minutes." She leaned forward until I could hear her breathing. "Just drive. Anywhere but home." I looked toward the house. Her mother was standing in the lit doorway with her arms crossed, watching us like she already knew how this would end. Anywhere meaning where? Exactly? Anywhere there is no one who knows my last name, my father's company, or a single detail about tonight. That rules out most of this city. Then find the part it doesn't rule out, she said. That was the first time she used my first name. Marcus. Instead of just saying driver, like I was part of the seat covers. I should have told her to go back inside and cool off. I should have called the house line and reported a family disturbance and protected the quiet, uncomplicated job I had spent 6 years building. I was 31, careful, dependable, the kind of man who liked being forgettable. Instead, I pulled the gear shift down and drove off before her mother could decide to stop us. From the back seat, she said, "Don't take me to one of his hotels. Wouldn't dream of it. Don't take me anywhere with cameras in the lobby," noted, "and don't ask if I'm fine." I checked the mirror. "You're not fine," she laughed once, short and dry. "So you do talk, only during emergencies and unreasonable passenger demands. Then tonight qualifies." I drove north past the gated section of the neighborhood until the streetlights thinned out and the city noise fell behind us. There was a spot I used to go when a shift ran long and my apartment felt too empty. An overlook above a reservoir with a bent metal railing and a vending machine that only worked when it wanted to. I parked and killed the engine. Elena didn't move right away. In the mirror, she looked younger than she acted at home and older than 24 should have looked that night. Where are we? Nowhere that matters. Is this where you bring every boss's daughter who hijacks your car? Only the ones who do it after midnight. She got out, and I followed. Because leaving her alone on a dark overlook was a bad idea, and because I had already crossed one line by driving her here at all. She stood at the railing and turned around. "My father told me tonight that I'm marrying Weston Cole." I knew the name. Everyone who worked near Richard Calloway knew the Cole family owned the shipping contracts he wanted, and Weston was the son who came with the contracts attached. "That's a heavy thing to say," I told her. "It's a heavier thing to do. Making you—" She smiled with no warmth in it at all. No locked door, no dramatic scene. Just spreadsheets and a family dinner where my father explained that affection is what people say when they can't read a balance sheet. That sounds like him. You know him from the driveway. I know him from the dinner table. Those are not the same thing. She folded her arms against the cold. He announced it like a quarterly earnings call. I said no. He said I was being emotional. He'd already told the Cole family a wedding season. I stayed by the car, keeping the distance a driver was supposed to keep. Talk to him again when there's no audience. That's useless advice. It's the cleanest advice I have. It's useless. Clean advice usually is. She walked closer, close enough that keeping my professional distance took actual effort. "You really think I haven't tried talking to him? I think I'm a driver standing on a hillside pretending to understand your whole life after 10 minutes of knowing about it." That stopped her. For the first time that night, the anger in her face eased off just enough to let something else show through. "Fair," she said. "If you want the honest version, you need a plan, not a scene." I'm excellent at scenes, I noticed. A small smile crossed her face and disappeared fast. If I had known where that night was heading, I might have turned the car around right then. Not because I didn't care, but because caring was exactly what made the whole thing dangerous. By the next morning, my schedule had already changed before I finished my coffee. The house manager, a sharp woman named Denise, who had survived 3 decades around wealthy families without ever looking surprised, handed me a tablet in the garage. "Miss Calloway requested you for the day," she said. "For what?" "Everything, apparently." She said it like the word amused her. Elena came out 10 minutes later in sunglasses, carrying coffee she had no intention of finishing, and climbed into the front seat instead of the back. "Your father won't like that," I said. "My father doesn't like farmers, markets, library cards, or people saying his name without a title. He survives." We spent that day running errands that made no logical sense. A bookstore 40 minutes away because the closer one had bad lighting. A grocery store because she wanted to understand what regular produce looked like. A guest lecture she left halfway through because the speaker said the word optimize 4 times in one sentence. "You work for people who say optimize," I told her when she got back in the car. "Yes, but they pay well for the privilege." She kept testing the edges of things, not in a spoiled way, in a way that made it clear she wanted to know exactly where the real wall was. "Do you ever get tired of calling me Miss Calloway?" she asked at a red light. "Yes." "Then stop. At work, I have to." "And off work?" "We've never been off work together. Last night, that was overtime with bad judgment on my part. So there's a category for it now." "There is now," I admitted, and she smiled like she had won something. That evening, she asked me to take her to a restaurant downtown, one already on the approved list, the kind of place where the host judged your shoes before your face. I pulled up to the curb. "We're here," I said. She didn't move. "I already changed the reservation. 2 people. "You can't do that." "I did it, so apparently I can. I'm working. You have to eat. I can eat later." "That's depressing." "It's called employment." She opened her door anyway. "If you sit out here while I go in alone, every person in that restaurant will stare through the glass, wondering why the driver is parked and the daughter isn't. Come inside. We eat, and nobody makes it strange unless you do." That's a very well-built trap. "Thank you. I had all afternoon." Inside, the waiter looked at her, then at me, then decided his tip depended on treating this as completely normal. Elena ordered like someone who knew the room but didn't care about impressing it. "Tell me something real," she said once the bread came. "I drive for your father." "That's what you do, not who you are. Tell me what you actually want." "I want a quiet life," I said. "You already have one. Maybe I'm done shopping for it." She studied me the way nobody had in years. "My father got sick when I was a teenager," I told her. "I learned early that steady work beats interesting work. After he passed, I just kept choosing steady. Eventually, steady became my whole personality." She softened. "I'm sorry. Don't be." "He's not a bad man," she said of Weston, later, quieter. "That's the worst part. He's polite, well-educated, and when he looks at me, he sees a partnership agreement with good posture." I almost smiled, and she caught it. "That was mean," she said. "It was accurate." "Those often travel together," I told her, and something in the dinner loosened after that. Ordinary talk about her one failed semester living in a dorm before her father's assistants corrected the situation. My old apartment with a radiator that treated winter as optional. Her habit of eating diner food specifically because nobody there knew her last name. After dinner, she asked me to drive with no destination in mind. "Nowhere that matters," she said, throwing my own words back at me, and I drove her along the river until the shops thinned out. "You know this isn't just rebellion, right?" she said at a quiet light. "I'm trying very hard not to know that. That sounds exhausting. It has its benefits." "I like being with you," she said, and the light turned green, and I didn't answer right away. "That's not a small thing," I finally said. "I know. It should be, but it isn't." I pulled over near a closed park with the engine still running. "Elena, listen to me. I'm not Weston. I don't have a family office or a second address anywhere warm. I have savings, a decent lease, and a job your father could end before breakfast. And you might decide in 6 months that this was one hard week, and I was the nearest open door. That's what you actually think of me? I think pressure makes people reach for whatever air is closest. And you think you're air? I think I'm convenient." She reached for her seatbelt, stopped, then said, "You are the least convenient man I have ever met." "Good," I said. "No. Infuriating. Also true. That night changed things between us, even though nothing happened that anyone could point to. We stopped pretending we didn't want to. The weeks after were reckless by our own careful standards. Coffee before her appointments. A detour behind a museum because she hated being introduced only as Richard's daughter. An hour at the reservoir eating gas station food while she called it fine dining for fugitives. The first time I touched her on purpose, it was small. Our hands brushing on the same door handle, neither of us pulling back. I touched her cheek slowly enough that she could have stopped it. She didn't. The kiss was brief and honest, and it ruined the rest of my good judgment completely. "Was that a terrible professional decision?" she whispered after. "The worst," I said. "Are you sorry?" "No." "Good." We got careless after that. Denise's eyebrows started doing more work than her mouth. Another driver, a talkative man named Roland, stopped joking with me and started looking worried instead. Then Richard Calloway noticed. Men like him don't need to raise their voice, because everyone around them already moves at the sound of a finger snap. I was called into his office at 6:45 in the morning. "Marcus," he said, "close the door." He had a folder on the desk he didn't bother opening because he already knew everything inside it. "You were dependable." "Were," I repeated. "Don't make this insulting," he said. "My daughter has been spending unusual amounts of time in your car, dining with you, leaving the property without proper scheduling." "That happened," I said. "You're not going to deny it." "No." "Interesting," he said. "Most men try. You are my employee, Marcus, not her equal, and you should have known your place." There it was, the sentence that was meant to knock the wind out of me, and somehow it didn't. It just clarified things. "I know my place," I told him. "It's wherever I can look at myself in a mirror without flinching." "Your employment ends today," he said. "Security will walk you out." "I found the driveway myself 6 years ago," I told him. "I can find it again on the way out." I called Elena from a gas station 2 miles away, straight to voicemail. By noon, my number stopped delivering at all. 3 nights later, I parked half a mile from the estate and walked to a stretch of fence near the old maintenance gate that a storm had bent years earlier and the grounds crew had never properly fixed. Elena and I had once joked that a determined raccoon could get through it. I turned out to be the raccoon. She came to the fence pale, and without makeup, no performance left in her at all. "You came," she whispered. "I was afraid you'd do the smart thing," she said. I hated the smart thing. For weeks after that, we met at that fence in the gap between patrols, trading information like teenagers with adult consequences. "He froze my cards," she told me one night. "He's scheduling dinners with Weston at the house like a hostage tasting menu." "Don't call it that." "Fine, a deeply unwilling guest experience." "Better," I said, and she almost laughed before her face went serious again. "Help me leave," she said. And that was the night my old life ended for good, because saying yes meant becoming useful in a way that actually mattered. I came back the next night with a notebook. Elena stared at it. "Is that a getaway plan written on paper like it's 1990? "I'm old-fashioned," I told her, and she called it adorable and organized in the same breath. 3 days later, she arrived breathless. "My father's company gala is Friday night at the downtown hotel," she said. "He's pulling most of the security detail there because he wants the entrance controlled. Only 2 guards left at the house. Roland is working the gala. Denise is off that night." "You got all of that how?" I asked. "I listened," she said. "It's useful being underestimated." Friday came the way most important days do. Slowly, and then all at once. I packed my life into boxes I wouldn't miss. Clothes, tools, cash from 6 years of careful saving, food in a cooler because escaping is a lot less romantic when someone is hungry 2 hours in. Roland called me that morning. "You doing anything stupid tonight?" he asked. "Define stupid. Anything involving the Calloways. Then probably yes." He was quiet for a second, then said, "The service alley on Birch Street gets blocked after 9:30. Catering trucks leave before that. I did not tell you that." "You did not," I agreed. I parked 2 blocks from the hotel with my hands steady and no one left to tell me where to stand. At 9:18, Elena came out a side door with 1 small bag. No dramatic look back, no performance for anyone watching. "Drive," she said, getting in. "I'm having deja vu," I told her. "Talk later. Drive now." 2 blocks in, her phone started ringing. She turned it off without answering. "Are you sure?" I asked. "No," she said, "but drive anyway." By the next morning, the missed calls had become a wall of unknown numbers. Roland sent 1 text. "Do not answer anyone until you are across a state line. Genius." Elena read it and smiled through tired eyes. "I like Roland," she said. We crossed into another state and kept going until we reached a small city where an old friend of mine named Thomas ran an auto shop and needed a reliable driver and someone to answer phones without losing patience. He looked at Elena, then at me, and said, "I'm not judging. I'm just admiring the paperwork nightmare from a distance." Our first apartment was small enough that we had to take turns in the kitchen. Elena learned what a separate utility bill was and was not thrilled about it. I bought an old truck because I had always wanted one, and she called it my emotional support vehicle, and she was not exactly wrong. Richard didn't disappear completely. Messages came through assistants first, then silence for months. Elena sent exactly 1 email. "I am safe. I am working. I chose this. When you can speak to me without trying to purchase my obedience, I will answer." He called 6 months later while we were assembling a cheap bookshelf that had no respect for basic geometry. Elena stared at the screen before answering. "Hello, Dad," she said, and then, "No, I'm not coming home because you're uncomfortable." Then, "Marcus is here." She handed me the phone. My daughter tells me you have taken care of her, he said. She takes care of herself, I told him. Yes, he admitted. She made that clear. I handled this badly. You handled it like a business deal, I said, and you didn't like losing. I would like to visit, he said. Not to negotiate, just to see her. Elena took the phone back and set the terms herself. You can visit. You can't bring Weston. You can't bring staff. You can't insult Marcus in our home. He came alone that Saturday, which was either respect or the hardest logistical achievement of his life. He looked at our secondhand furniture and our crooked bookshelf and the daughter who had built a life without his permission, and he didn't pretend to love it, but he tried. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You cost me a great deal of trouble." You were due for a hobby, I told him, and Elena nearly choked on her coffee, and Richard Calloway gave the smallest laugh I had ever heard out of him. Are you happy here? He asked her. Yes, she said, before I could answer for her. Then I will learn to be less foolish about it, he said. A year later, I stood in the driveway of the small rented house outside our new city, watching Elena argue with our landlord about a loose porch railing like she had been born to defend it. My truck sat under a tree. Her father had visited twice without trying to rearrange our lives either time. Do you intend to marry her? He asked me once, walking me to my truck after dinner. That's a question for her father. I'm asking. Yes, I told him, and he nodded slowly, like it cost him something and gained him something at the same time. Elena walked back over after winning her argument about the porch. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The house, the quiet, not having me complain about utility bills? No, I said, and it was the easiest answer I had given in years. I spent a long time believing my whole life was meant to happen behind a steering wheel, eyes forward, never reaching for anything outside the route. Then one night, a woman climbed into my car and asked me to take her somewhere no one could find her, and I did. But the truth is, she is the one who took me somewhere, out of the background and into a life I finally had the nerve to choose for myself. Would you have trusted Marcus if you were sitting where Elena sat that first night? And do you think Richard earned a second chance after everything he tried to control?